Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Infinite Abilities Podcast. I am your host, Nick Yerhart, and we are here to encourage each other to find our own unique abilities. Let's go. All right, everyone. So today we have Laura, and her story is remarkable. I can't wait for you to hear her story and learn all about what she does to help others. So let's get right into it. Laura, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Laura Danielson. If you want to find me on social media, it's Laura L. Danielson on Facebook. Uh, I live in Canada, in British Columbia, and for the last year and a little bit, I have engulfed myself in learning about energy healing and all different types of modalities and stuff in energy healing because for about 2.5 years, I was bedridden. So I couldn't get out of bed. I needed help to get dressed, to shower, and all of the things, all of the necessities of daily life. I was uh, really incapable of doing myself for quite some time. So I had kind of all but given up on like what life was supposed to look like for me. And when I come across the process that actually like elevated me and took me out of my pain, I like really just dove into it. And so for the last year and a bit, since I've actually had my health back and the ability to move and, get out of bed and all the fun things that you expect to be able to do at 40. Okay. like, I know that, like I have had different perspectives of looking at age as I've grown up, but, to be in my 40s, I'm like, I didn't expect that to be a point in my life where I wasn't going to be able to get out of bed. So,
Yeah.
it was a really hard reality when the pain meds started to take my mind away, when and still not be able to do anything physically, like when my brain kind of went with the drugs that they were giving me and all the prescriptions, and all of a sudden I couldn't do any of it. I couldn't work online. I couldn't work, and I've always prided myself on being an independent individual where I could, if any, I didn't expect anybody to support me, like I didn't want to fall, like I've always just done everything that I could to support myself, no matter what the situation in my life was. And going to work and doing heavy labor jobs were, my fallback. So as my body started to get worse, I started to take a lot of schooling and got into marketing, got into writing, and wanted to see the world. I'm like, if I can't even do a lot seeing the world, I still want to take that opportunity and go and then write about, like the places that I go, and kind of advocate for, more businesses being wheelchair accessible and being like, be accessible for the disabled. Like that was kind of my route when it was going to be for like traveling and writing about the places that I go and all the experiences that I had, especially since I was in a place of like limited mobility and not being able to do much for myself. Uh, and then when they started upping my painkillers and making things, it just made things so much more hard because I couldn't think anymore. So writing was out, the marketing was out. I did it for a little while, and then as I stopped taking those pills and everything kind of started coming back to me, I was still in a lot of pain. Like I stopped taking the painkillers long before my pain lifted, and switched to something a lot more natural. Being in Canada, it's nice because like THC and CBD and stuff is all legal and on our shelves here. So it was but it was interesting to me because CBD is actually a lot more accessible in the United States and in the areas and stuff like that than it is up here. But it was my go-to when I could afford to do it, because of course it's not covered by any healthcare or anything like that. So I was kind of just forcing myself through the pain as I was doing things, but it got to a point where I had to shut everything down. I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything physical. I couldn't do anything mental. So I kind of gave up on everything. And
So,
yeah,
what caused all of that? Like, what happened?
I was in a car accident when I was 15. and I smashed my head
Okay.
really hard into a windshield and almost went through it, but my seatbelt locked. And so after my head got crushed, they said I was about a centimeter from actually snapping my neck. So everything locked just in time, but it really did a lot of damage in my C spine and my neck, and started causing like really bad headaches. My arms started to go numb at that point, but physically, like my body healed. Yeah, I was 15 when that happened. And physically my body looked fine. Like whenever I would go to the doctors and say that, hey, I'm still having like a lot of numbness and a lot of pain, they would send me through all the x-rays and the tests, but never come back with anything. So they started saying that, so I really feel for people that when they get told that they're looking for attention and, and that kind of thing, because when you're not showing physical signs and that pain is true, they tend to have this go-to of just saying that you're making it up. And that's like a horrible feeling.
Yeah.
So I stopped looking for answers probably by the time I was probably 18, 19, that I went through like 3 years of, being labeled like all sorts of different things from the doctors and so on. And when you're that young and you still look capable, when you're struggling so much and you don't want to show people how much you're struggling, especially when anybody you do tell,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, you're too young to feel that bad.
Uh-huh.
So about 2 years before I found the process that lifted my pain, they diagnosed me with fibromyalgia, which is their go-to when they're done with you coming to them and saying.
Yep.
What I've learned about that diagnosis is when your body isn't showing like what we would consider, a physical, showing of like a disability or a diagnosis. When you don't show that, it can kind of come from like a spiritual level. So a past
Mhm.
life or family, a lot of inherited genes, inherited beliefs and that kind of thing. So your body internally will be presenting the pain and all of the suffering, but externally, because it's coming from a deeper level than what you're experiencing in this body, it doesn't like show up in the doctor's tests and whatnot. And so so it came to a point where I was just really excited to have a diagnosis after my whole, like over half of my life was spent, struggling in one way or another. Like it wasn't always really bad. The last 2.5 years, I had experienced some stress. And they say that like when you get into high levels of stress and, things aren't
Yeah.
going your
It makes
way,
everything worse.
everything worse, right? So
Mhm.
with that, being at the forefront and just like big life changes. And they were great life changes. Like I left a bad situation and I came to a beautiful place, like living in British Columbia. It's absolutely beautiful and amazing. And, there was just little stress triggers, like being away from my family, which I hadn't really done a lot. Uh, and being away from my sister and my niece who's 9 now. So like there's like those things that I didn't actually like consider when it came to what was affecting my body. And it was a lack of knowing as
Yeah.
well. If
Mhm.
you're not if you're not educated in it, there and with fibro there wasn't a lot of information out there. For a long time there
Mhm.
hasn't been a lot of information out there because it's like I say, it's literally their go-to when they can't explain why you have so much pain. That's that, there's that they're like, well, it's neurological, and they just kind of put you under an umbrella. And so what I
Yeah.
also learned about that recently was that when they put me on gabapentin, there's two different types of gabapentin. There's the one for like epileptics, and it's I don't really know how to explain that one, but the other one is basically an antipsychotic. So because they were still under that, they still had me under the umbrella of not knowing why I felt the way that I felt, and the fact that they knew that my pain was real. They experienced it. They tried to send me for a surgery to have my hand, because I have a slight carpal tunnel from when I was working behind the computer 24/7, for a few
Mhm.
years. And so it still shows up in some tests. And so they wanted to send me for surgery. They're like, if we can help with any of the pain, like, let's do it. And so it's a surgery that you get done when you're awake. And he put 5 freezing needles in through the palm of my hand. I felt every single one. And then after like the 10 or 15 minutes where they let it settle, he came back into the room and said, close your hand. And I did this. And he goes, you're not supposed to be able to do that. I can't operate. I'm like, this is the best that it gets. Like you're getting like me on a good day. And
Uh-huh.
he's like, no, you'll have to go to sleep because if you move your hand while I'm operating, then you suffer the chance of losing full use of your, not just your hand, but in some cases your arm. And I was like, well, okay, let's not do that then.
Wow.
So I ended up spending
Hmm.
like 18 hours with a
Yeah.
frozen arm and not getting surgery.
Paper. That's
Yeah.
annoying.
Right?
Wow. So, what is the process that you found that actually did help?
They call it a superconscious recode, and it's something that I've learned and been practicing myself. There's a few secondary processes that go with it. It falls under the neurohypnosis kind of umbrella, and NLP,
Hmm.
and that category is very it's to, like the science behind it is the neuroscience behind your brain, and then the spirituality
Yep.
side of it is basically working with our subconscious and our higher self, believing that there is a greater force to our life than just what we see physically on this plane and experience with our egos. uh
Yep.
so yeah, so he called it. So I mean, I haven't really thought, like, I want to kind of, I guess, because I use it a lot, and I use a couple of the other modalities that I've learned in with my energy healing and reading people's energies. So I've kind of like mixed it all up into my own thing, but essentially
Hmm.
is going back through time and space and helping you heal not just your own traumas, not just the things that you faced in this lifetime, but also past lifetimes and things that you've inherited from your family, taking some of the emotions out of some like the traumas that we've dealt with. And
Yeah.
like, so we part of being here on earth, right? We've chosen our path, we've chosen a lot of our experiences because of things that we're ready to learn, things that we're ready here to help heal our families and ourselves, from, yeah, again, like past traumas and stuff like that that we've experienced in different lifetimes. So when you choose your experiences, a lot of them are to kind of make sure you're sent off in the right direction, to meet the people you're supposed to meet,
Uh-huh.
to experience and heal the things that you're meant to
Yep.
heal. Instead, because of the way we're taught and because of the way our brains pick up information from the time we're a young child, we end up holding on to so much of that in ways that we're not meant to. If you look back at your timeline, if you look back at everything that's happened, everything that's going on, and you take the perspective of, I chose this, so why did I choose this for myself? It can really kind of empower you and give you your power back in making better choices for your future and how you respond and go ahead. But without that knowledge,
Yeah.
all of the traumas that we pick up, they end up in cellular memory, and it becomes
Hmm.
habitual to kind of live in those moments. And so the
Yeah.
negative mindset. And then there's always, of course, the fact that
Hmm.
if you look at it as we're like towers that emit, radio frequencies, that would mean that if we're emitting our radio frequency out there, it affects, the people around us. So if you can't always control the
Yep.
people that are in your environment, so you start to absorb some of that negativity and all of the stuff that we're hanging on
Yep.
to. All of that negative energy becomes cellular memory. And if we don't know how to lift it out and send it out, that's what can cause a whole lot of physical pain, emotional pain, spiritual pain. And it's so the process in itself helps you go back, and including, like, how I run it myself is I do a timeline therapy where we pick an emotion that you suffer, that you find yourself in consistently, and we go through and we
Hmm.
heal the moments on that specific emotion. And I usually do two. When I start, I do anger and sadness, because they kind of go hand in hand. Once you alleviate the anger, your natural reaction is sadness, whether it's from the
Yep.
same experiences that caused the anger or different experiences. The anger essentially falls down into sadness, which can cause like into depression, especially if you're prone to depression, depending on, what ailments we're working towards, helping you get through. And so from there, after doing a timeline therapy, then that kind of opens up the communication between you and your subconscious, you and your higher self, kind of gives you a little bit more of a gap
Mhm.
to fill. So then from there, it's like kind of envisioning what you want for your future. And it can be something small, just, something good, something you're looking forward to, a place you want to go or something you want to have in your life. And so I'll take you and we'll sit in that emotion and put you through all of your five senses and discovering how that feels for you. And then once you're in that space, I take you back and we go through the recode, and we go back and we pick out we have your higher self go through, find all of the experiences that have brought you to where you are in your emotion and why you doubt you can have what you just envisioned. And we go back and we heal all of those moments. And that can include just this life, or I've gone through, I did one just the other day, and we went through multiple different lifetimes. We ended up in some family trauma that had kind of carried down genetically. And she ended up
Mhm.
releasing a whole lot of emotion coming out of it, which is beautiful for me to see. I love it when I get
Yeah.
through it and to see, you can just see the elevation and just the change in the aura of people
Mhm.
as they let go of some of the things that have really held on to them for so long. And so when I
And
got that
those
process
things,
done, oh,
yeah, those things tend to hold you back your whole life. And I worked with many clients where we figure out like one specific trauma that happened. Usually they don't even realize that's what's been causing all this suffering their whole life. And it's like a light bulb in their head goes up, and they're just like, "I'm not that person."
that's
It's like,
right.
no, you're not. Now we can move on, and it's just incredible. And as a coach, it's the best feeling ever when you can help somebody work through something that significant.
Absolutely. And if there's any, and the one thing that I think a lot of even coaches don't realize, but as you are going through some of those things with other people, if there's any mirroring, anything that, like that in yourself that you might have mirrored that you didn't know was there, even if it wasn't as heavy as
Yeah,
a experience, you release
yeah.
that, because as you're giving them the release, you naturally actually heal yourself from those similar releases.
I've had that happen where I'm working with a client and we're working on their problem, and I figure out one of my problems. I'm like, oh, I gotta work on that one. But yeah, it's like you learn so much about yourself from helping others, and it's just beautiful.
It is. It absolutely is. It's amazing, like when you really start to learn the energy side of it and realize that you're a magnet. You attract in everything that your whole frequency, everything, all your energy, where you are in your head is what you're bringing to you. We manifest all of the time, which is part of the problem. Like when you're manifesting all the time, if you're having a struggle staying in that positive momentum, then you beat yourself up for not being in that positive momentum. But it's just being
Yeah,
aware, finding that awareness and being able to utilize that awareness to change, over time, because it's all habits. We weren't born into a negative mentality. That came over time with, experiences, things we were taught, what we seen. We could have misread a situation, and it sat negatively in your head for so long that it became a habit, and you don't even, like you say, you don't even know where it came from.
yeah, exactly. I see it all the time. I see it in myself all the time. I'm constantly working on myself. I have a coach. I have multiple coaches. I have one for the more, you know, personal side of things. A life coach. It's just, it's just incredible if you just keep improving yourself, and the better that I can, I can be myself, then the better that I can help my clients and everybody that I interact with every day. So it's really awesome.
It really is. And there's one cycle that you can find yourself in though, and this was interesting that you said this, because like the gentleman actually that I ran through the process, that that he I went to his 5-day class that brought me into this work and shot me like really forward on all of this journey. Um, is getting caught in that cycle of always feeling like you need to better yourself and be better, because we
Mhm,
can get into that cycle of not feeling good enough and always needed to learn more to be better. Part of it is
mhm,
just we're
mhm.
releasing the programming. We are always our best selves. You don't have to be better. You are perfect the way that you are. And
Yep.
it's just releasing some of the programming, or essentially all of the programming that is over top of your perfect self. From day one, we are
Exactly.
being
Yeah.
programmed into certain beliefs, and not being taught how to heal from traumas that were only there to help us grow. And so if we're stuck in those traumas, then, we're not learning from them anymore. They've just become a cycle of fear. But being
Yeah.
able to get out of that, knowing that you're perfect, I'm not saying don't learn, because I love learning and there's always so much to know and to help other people with, but to not label
Yeah.
yourself as broken, not label yourself as not knowing enough,
Yep.
because as you get
Mhm.
stuck in those, then sometimes that's where people get stuck in, like that fraud syndrome or whatever, where they don't feel good enough to tell, because they don't feel like they know enough, they don't feel like they've come far enough. And so
Yep.
being able
Yeah.
to, be in that cycle of knowing that, yes, I want to better myself and learn more, but I'm perfect the way that I am, and what I bring to the table is enough.
Yeah, and it's more undoing things than, like, adding things on.
That's right.
What that's what I feel like, self-improvement is. You're not actually, like, improving, you're getting rid of the negative stuff that holds you, back.
That's a great way
So,
to put
yeah,
it.
I love that.
Absolutely. Yep. Me
Yeah.
too.
Well, Laura, I learned so much on this episode. Thank you so much. And I gotta ask you a question. So, my slogan is Your abilities are infinite. What does that mean to you?
Whew, it's truth. It's honesty. It's the absolute truth. Your abilities are infinite. No matter where you're at in life, no matter where you are starting, you have the chance to be the you that you want to be. That no matter how, there's nothing in life that's going to stop you once you've made that decision and the choice to step into the person that you want to be. There's no disability, there's no ability, there's nothing out there that can stop you from being exactly who you want to be once you've made that choice to be it.
Amazing, amazing. And I know at the beginning you told the audience how they can find you on social media. Is there any other ways that they can connect?
I'm on TikTok. Uh, I do believe you can find me at Unbalanced81 or Starla is how I'm on TikTok. And YouTube is The Best Spiritual Healing. And
Okay,
yeah,
awesome, awesome.
amazing. Well, thank you so
Well,
much for
Laura,
having me. I really
thank you.
appreciate this.
I was gonna say thank you for being on the show. It was really awesome.
I love chatting with you. It was great. Thank you so
It,
much.
it was, of course. If you enjoyed this show, please go ahead and share it on your Instagram story and tag me in the Nick Yerhart. Also, go ahead and share it anywhere else that you see fit, because the only way that I can grow this is by you guys sharing it. I don't sell anything on here. I don't have any sponsors, so let's just get it out there by word of mouth and help more people. Alright, everyone, remember your abilities are infinite.